In this video, we're going to talk about formatting you can do within cells, and then as well as some useful functions and formulas that you can do within Spreadsheet. All right, so I'm just in a different sheet here. And basically, we're going to start with something called data validation. And what validation allows me to do is it allows me to force users, collaborators, to only be able to put one kind of data into a cell. So let's say I'm putting grades in for students, and we're going to have some students down the side here, creatively called, you can see student 1, 2, 3, and I think this will extend it. Awesome. Okay, so we have those students, and let's say this is assignment 1. I know this is super generic, but you'll get the idea. So within this assignment, I only want teachers to be able to add a certain kind of text, basically, and that's grades. So what I can do is go to data, validation, and let's say I want them to pick from a list, and I want them to choose the items A or B or C or D or F. And I have some other options here. I can show that list, which I like, and I can even allow them to have something else that shows a warning, and I'm going to leave it like that for now. You're going to see how this works. So once I click on any of these cells, it won't come up because that's not within the cells that I put the rule. So if I click on this, it gives me a drop down and I can pick. So a teacher could go through these. And since I said allow other text, like I could put for, and it'll still work, but it'll bring up that little comment, oh, invalid cell contents. Now let's just change it to where it won't accept it so you can see what happens with that. So I uncheck allowing it, and now you'll see the for is still there. That's because once I apply rules, it doesn't apply to things that were already in cells. So now if I put a for and I hit enter, it actually jumps back, it doesn't allow it, and says make sure you pick one from the list. So it's pretty much a way, and there are all kinds of other rules you can explore in there. I only want people to put numbers above 5 or things like that, and it can just let the collaborators know, oh, you're only supposed to put this here. So that's data validation. A couple other formatting things. There is, of course, borders in here. We haven't talked much about that, but I can add those. You can see I can add different colors and styles, etc., for borders. So let's undo that. I can also merge columns, merge rows. In the initial versions of Spreadsheet, I believe you could only merge only merge vertically, and then eventually, enough clamoring in the forums, they allowed merging horizontally as well. So that could be something as simple as, let's go back to our budget here. So within my budget, maybe this is January. Then I can merge these cells. So merge is right here. I have some options, but if I just click on the actual merge, it'll put January together. I want that centered. Got our justify here. And I can keep going and put February here, etc. So merging cells, certainly useful. We used it at school where we had blocks of time that we wanted to all merge together and just put the grades name right there. So another use for merging. I just want to show you some of the properties of rows and columns. You can certainly explore these later, but this is how we insert columns, insert one left. It's how I can delete columns, hide columns. Hide, I've found useful if I have a whole bunch of useful information, but I really only want to compare, column A to column Z, but I don't want to have to keep scrolling back and forth. So I can hide a whole bunch, hide these, hide columns, and then I can compare these two columns right next to each other. And then if I just click that, I hover over it, click that little arrow, and then it'll expand it back out. I can also freeze columns, and I'm going to go back to my attendance template to show you why that would be useful. Some of you already know this. I don't freeze columns through the drop down there, but what I can do is go and view freeze rows or freeze columns, and that's going to be useful if I, so this is an attendance one, and let's say I have a class with 50 kids. Let's hope we don't end up with 50 kids in one class, but let's say I have them all in one for their attendance, and I want to leave the month and the date there. What I can do is view freeze rows, and I can freeze 2 of them so that when I scroll down, I think you get the idea. I could scroll through all these names and I would still get to see November, December, and I can do that with columns as well. I've found this useful when I have a registration. I have the names here, and I want to see all the other things. I can leave the name, freeze the row, column 1, and then I can scroll through that as well. All right, let's get into a couple useful functions and formulas, but let me unfreeze these before I forget. Oh my. So formulas are where the most power in the spreadsheet is found, and I can certainly show you these formulas I used for tardy. I used a formula called Countif. So this basically means if there's a T in any of these cells, then add them up. So if for this student I start adding some T's, you're going to see that the tardy column starts to get added. Well, if they're tardy, they're still present, so the present is also starting to add up as well. And they can be very, very useful. So let's say this is money I made each day, and I want to do the sum. I can do equals sum, and then I can just drag through cells. I could also type that in, C12 colon C22, and parenthesis, I hit enter, gives me the sum down there. And but I also, spreadsheet is user-friendly enough that I don't have to remember to even type equals sum. Take a look at what I can do. I just go to a cell where I want to do a function or formula, and if I click this little epsilon there, you can see these often used ones. I can do sum, and it gave me all of that, and all I need to do is highlight the cells I want to use and hit enter, and it fills it right in, which is pretty cool. Another fast thing that Spreadsheet does for you is if I highlight a whole bunch of data, if I come way down to the right corner here and click, it actually gives me useful figures that go with that set of data. So that's with numbers, and I have average and all kinds of other stuff with numbers. If you want to explore all the different functions, just do equals and start typing like S. You'll see all the different S ones, or if I go like up here, equals T, there's just a whole bunch, right? So those were with numbers that I just showed you, but you can also do text ones. So you can see I have some names here, Sue Blue, Janine Green, and I can actually use formulas to save me some time. If this is my class list and if they're in separate cells, and I want them alphabetized by last name, what I can do is something like equals G12, so that's Sue's last name, and then I can do the ampersand, which is mushes strings together, something called concatenation. So the ampersand, and then along with comma, space, another ampersand, and I can do F12, and I hit enter, and there's Blue, comma, Sue, and I can extend this formula down. You can see I get other people in my class, last name, first name. And let's quick talk paste special. Remember I said if I used a formula and I copy something and then I try to paste it, I'll paste it down here. Take a look what happens. It does commas because if I look at the formula, it tried to adapt that to where I moved it on the sheet, when in fact I really just wanted the values. So if I do copy here, Control C, and then I right click, paste special, values, then I can pull all their names over there. So those are some useful functions, formulas to use with numbers, also with text, and you're probably beginning to see there's just so much behind spreadsheets that most of us have never taken the time to look at.